Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of Stranger Things Season 3. I've talked about this a bit on Twitter if you follow me. I'm not a fan of this season. There are some great things in the season, but when it's not executed properly, that makes it even more tragic, in my opinion. This was actually very much like Avengers Endgame in that manner. In that you've got the same cast. The cast is wonderful. They're coming back. You've got the same, elements of the universe that you know and love. You've got a lot of the same people working somewhat behind the scenes. But for whatever reason, whether it's some new writers coming in or whether it's just this push for agenda or this new thing they're trying, it doesn't honor what's come before. It doesn't, it just falls flat. It just falls flat. So I'll talk about that. I've got three actual main points here that, as to why this season's a failure. The first point I'll start with is that they decided to make this season, Season 3, a kind of self-parody of the franchise. If you've watched it by now, you notice there's a lot of comedy, this franchise has always been built on nostalgia, and there's been wonderful moments of nostalgia and homages to great 80s films as well, which was great. People loved that. Now it's seriously on the nose, and it's just over the top. I'll give you an example. Season 1, when the boys have Elle in the back of the bicycle and they're fleeing the people from Hawkins' lab, and Elle makes the van flip that's coming towards them. She makes it flip over their heads. Well, obviously that's an homage to E.T., right? I mean, that's, it's pretty easy to see that. But that's an homage. That's not a parody or a blatant copy of. It's using the elements of this story and all of its original organic stuff to pay tribute to something that happened in another different story with all of its original ideas and stuff. Compare that to Season 3 of Stranger Things and the Russian bad guy, like the heavy who comes in to fight Hopper all the time. He's doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger interpretation. They made him a literal parody of Terminator. They have him walk the same way, dress the same way, have the same haircut, try to do the accent even similarly, although he's supposed to be right. It's just, watching this, it was so out of place, and there were things like that were so out of place. And so that's, taking a new character and making it that much of a parody. But then they also took the existing characters, pre-existing characters that we knew and loved, and tried to suddenly change them into parodies. Hopper, for example. Hopper, they just deconstructed the hell out of Hopper in this series. He was always a hero. He wasn't a perfect character by any means, but he was a hero. He got stuff done, and he had his flaws, but it was a beloved character. They made him into a big, stereotypical doofus TV dad in this season. Now, of course, the characters are going to grow, and they're going to change a little bit and develop because of all the stuff they've been through, and, that makes sense. But you don't change like that. You don't take a character who's been beloved as a hero and as, just really honestly, he was a great example of a positive masculine energy in the first two seasons. And I hate that I'm even having to bring this up, but that's one of the things that they've shoved into Season 3 is the idea of masculinity and femininity and toxicity and all that kind of nonsense. But Hopper was great, and they just made him into a doofus. And the comedy doesn't even really hit. There may be a scene or two here and there, kind of makes, it's kind of funny. He's worried about Elle, his daughter now, being in her bedroom with Mike. And, maybe a scene or two, like when he was hugging the pillow on the bed. That was kind of funny, but there was too much of that. And they were really trying to just keep driving it into the ground. It fell flat. It just wasn't that funny for all the screen time they were giving it. There were other moments too, like later on in the season when you've got Steve and I forget her name, his co-worker there at Scoops Ahoy, that Robin, and they're on the drug or whatever that the Russians gave them, so they're spacing out and getting kind of silly with the stars. That scene was going on forever, and I'm just watching it thinking, this isn't funny. But that's actually getting a little bit into point two, which is the pacing and stuff like that. But so let me stick with point one here. They made it a parody of itself. The season even looked a little bit different, which is okay. You're doing, season 2 was pretty closely linked to season 1 and in appearance and themes and stuff like that. Okay. So you want to do a little something different, fine. Setting it in summer, that's a really great idea, because the first two were set in fall, winter. Summer's a cool idea to set it in. The 4th of July, you know, all of these are set around certain holidays. That sounds good. And that kind of plays into the idea of the Russians and all that kind of stuff and the Cold War and what was going on. Good, good, all right. So it's going to be during the summer. It's going to be a little more colorful, a little brighter. Okay. It's going to be that bright? Are the characters going to be changed that much, wearing that many different types of things? Is Hawkins City, our town itself, going to be changed that much? Season 1 was in 83, Season 2, 84, this is 85. And if you look at the timeline, Season 2 was Halloween of 84, going into Thanksgiving and whatnot. And then this is the 4th of July of that very next year. So this is only within the space between Halloween to the 4th of July. You know, within one space. That's not even a full calendar year. And they're expecting us to accept how much Hawkins itself has changed. Okay, it gets them all in there. Well, you maybe should have laid some of the groundwork for that in Season 2, but whatever, you know. Okay, so a mall was built. Now it's just this huge metropolis. They've got a freaking Italian restaurant with a string quartet playing in it, and it was just too much to believe. Too much change to believe had happened to the town that quickly. Also to the characters themselves. Yes, they're at that age where they're growing into puberty, and yes, a lot of rapid changes happen at that point. I get that, I do. But they didn't have, they consciously made Mike, he starts the show off as a jerk. He's an asshole. He really is when he starts the show off. Not just to Hopper or anything, but to everybody. To Steve, to his friends or whatever. When Dustin comes back, they couldn't give, a crap that Dustin's back, whatever. Dustin does most of the whole season away from them with Steve. And they have their little moment at the end where they reunite, but it's not enough. It doesn't really justify all of the changes that they made through there. So the characters themselves just aren't acting in any kind of way that's recognizable. And why is this? So there's a couple reasons, I think. On one hand, they might be really tried to focus on reinventing themselves, making sure they do something different now, so they're not accused of just doing the same old thing, which is a mistake. It's generally a mistake when writers or showrunners try that, because if something's working, if the formula works, you don't want to drive it into the ground, but you don't just want to change it for the sake of change. Let the change happen organically. So that was a problem there. Then I also think that maybe they were trying to consciously play in to the trope of the cheesy horror sequel, because a lot of these films, Jaws and everything like that these first two seasons have paid such tribute to. Historically, in the 80s, as sequels kept progressing, the sequels ended up getting pretty cheesy. Of course, they got very a lot more brutal and gory and stuff like that. That's kind of a law of sequels anyway or whatever. But they got cheesy too. So I'm thinking, maybe are they trying to be clever and kind of pay homage to that, or tribute that idea that this is season 3 of Stranger Things now, so we're going to try to mimic what happens to further sequels of these great horror films that we were inspired by. And if that's their idea, it didn't come off as clever. It comes off as tedious. There were so many scenes in season 3 that I just wanted to fast forward through. I was just bored. I wanted to actually go do something else while I was kind of sort of watching it. It was just not, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to watch. And I would never have dreamed of doing anything that would have torn my eyes away from season 1 or 2. I mean, I was just engaged and gripped. And if I thought I misheard somebody, I would rewind it. I mean, I wanted to experience everything of those seasons. Season 3 was just a chore to get through for the sake of revision. So I spent a lot of time on point 1. There's more to be said about that, but let me just jump into point 2, which I already touched on a little bit about the pacing. The first 3 episodes even, it takes to the end of the 3rd episode for the adventure to really start, for the tension to really truly begin. I mean, they start out with Billy a little bit in the first episode, but it's so far removed that they're really not connecting any dots yet. The majority of those first 3 episodes is just to show you how much these characters have changed. Let's just show you where these characters are now and who they are now. And who they are not people that you still have fun spending time with. They're just not. And that plays into point 3. I could spend a lot more time on point 2, but I spent so much time on point 1 that let me move on. Point 3 is a pretty big one, and that is the social agenda that's made its way into this series now. The wokeness, quote unquote. people point to little seeds of this, like in season 2 or whatever, but I didn't think anything was done in season 2 or 3 that wasn't organic to the story, that didn't make sense for the story. Season 3 severely jumped the shark. I mean, they've got this. The men are jokes. The men are jokes. The women are right. In fact, I talk about themes and how season 1 was about communicating and who is it safe to share the secret of yourself with. Season 2 broadened that to a family. Who's in your group, who's in your tribe. Who do you trust to be in your party. For the Dungeons and Dragons thing, your families and such. And that was a great theme in that. This one looks like they started out with the idea of looking at that, developing that idea more in terms of intimate relationships. What does it mean for a relationship to change and to grow more intimate? Great. That's a perfect place to build up in this, but they don't execute it well. In fact, the way they execute it is that men need to respect women more and believe women more, and men are bad, and men need to give way to the women and realize that women are. That's just all. You just had this stuff. It was just over and over. I don't see how people don't get this. Look at, for example, Nancy, when she's wanting to pursue this story there at the Hawkins Gazette or whatever it's called there. She's not worried about the town. She's not worried about anybody else but herself. She wants to be right. She wants to be believed. She wants to have some credit and to have this reporter's thing under her belt. Her co-workers around her there at the newspaper, they are just the most paper-thin, two-dimensional cliches. It's ridiculous. That was bad writing. Jake Busey and all of that, his character. I was thinking, you guys are better than this. This writing. You just put up some cardboard cutouts of characters and expect us to buy that. Also, they could be the bad guys, the bad evil men who are treating the woman at work evilly. It was so dumb. So she goes off and does all this with no regard for Jonathan whatsoever, no regard for what trouble he might get in. She gets them actually fired. Now, yes, she is right. She is onto something with this, but she lays into him about blah 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 blah. He apologizes to her for not believing her. Okay, well, she was right. So he apologizes to her. She doesn't bother apologizing to him. She turns around. You know what that bitch says? She says, well, I look forward to you never doubting me again. Dump that bitch. Feed her to the damn mind flayer. I don't even give a shit about that character anymore. She admitted to her mother in a previous scene that she was acting out of her own interest, not thinking about anybody around her. God forbid she apologized to Jonathan for that. Nope. The takeaway that the Duffer Brothers and the Stranger Things showrunners want you to take from that scene is that Jonathan shouldn't have doubted her. And as we see more in this show, you don't doubt women. You believe women. Don't doubt women. This is bullshit. It's subpar writing. It's the agenda flighting in here and ruining the storytelling and the craft because the agenda is so blatant. We see this over and over with how Max is always lecturing Mike. Mike is worried about Elle. Well, you shouldn't. She's a grown. She has her own abilities to you need to trust her and blah blah blah. He's concerned about her going back into this Elseworld or whatever to spy on Billy to find out where he is. It's a legit concern, and she's like, I need you to trust me. Oh, it was just one damn thing after another. And then Joyce constantly showing Hopper how it's done, and she's gonna, no, you didn't do right. Well, I'm gonna call up that government place and tell them what for, because you didn't do it right, and we need to get back to our kids, and I told you so. And it's just over and over again. It beats you in the head. It's not even just one little thing that you can ignore. Hopper dying was gratuitous. There was no reason for it. It was gratuitous. Billy dying was great. Billy dying was fine because that's a redemption of his character. He'd done so many horrible things, even in season 2, but I only seen season 3 when he's, affected by the mind flare. So that sacrifice that he made at the end, that was actually I thought that was really well done. And I thought it was powerful. I liked the way that Elle was getting through to him with his memories and stuff. Some people point to that and say, oh, they're just trying to say stuff about toxic masculinity. Well, that's pretty well written. That there are some toxic ass, if you want to use that, watchword, which is stupid anyway, but there are some horrible people. There's some horrible men in the world who have been abused and will carry on that abuse forward and try and spread it around. And that was a good exploration, I thought, of that. His story, his memories, and I thought it was a touching way even to have Elle get through to him like that and have him do the sacrifice in the end. That was well done. Then we have the season ending. I don't understand this pathological need of storytellers to dismantle their universe when they're done telling stories in it. That's just not fun for an audience. That's not fun for viewers. That doesn't work. I don't understand. Like, you set up your universe, you set up your characters, we go tell the stories in it, but just because you're done with it for a time, or you want to move off elsewhere or whatever, you don't have to send half the characters off to go move to this place. You don't have to kill a bunch of characters off. You don't have to change the dynamics, even though it tried to sort of, keep things, the same with, they're going to visit each other. Well, what is that, Sitcoms do this all the time, which I think is just such a ridiculous mistake for sitcoms to try and blow that part. I hate that as well. So I don't understand this need that storytellers have to just to dismantle their whole universe when they feel like they're done with it. That's nonsense. And then the idea that a lot of people are going to watch that last episode. The Duffer Brothers themselves actually wrote and directed that. Now, the Duffer Brothers are incredibly skilled writers, directors. They came up with the whole idea of this franchise. It was really great. But they don't write and direct every episode. Throughout the seasons, it's usually like the first and the last, or a couple in the beginning, couple in the end, or something like that. And their writing and directing usually shines far more over than anybody else that they had come in and do an episode. And the final episode of season 3 had amazing stuff in it. That whole scene with Dustin and finally the reveal of his girlfriend and then having to sing to her over that was brilliant. That was funny. That was good organic comedy fitting into this universe. That was priceless. I mean, that was like a line of the old, wonderful Stranger Things I knew and loved shining through, and it was glorious. I love that. And even though they didn't make the right decisions with the gratuitous killing of Hopper and then splitting all the characters up, they wrote it very well to appeal to emotions. I mean, it really did resonate with you emotionally extremely well. So I think your average, and I'll end on this because I'm going long here, but I think your average viewer, maybe Stranger Things fan, maybe not, but your average viewer who is just, God forbid they sit and think about anything they've just watched. All they want to do is feel about it. I make all these arguments and people will say, well, I liked it. Like, that means shit. That's just saying you have bad taste. Give me an argument. Tell me why these points are bad and why you think the decisions they made are good. You don't just say, well, I liked it. Like they have a, that's valid or something. You have a right to like whatever you want, but I don't have any reason to respect your taste. I mean, people have horrible taste all over the place. But I think what's happening here is that you've got people watch the whole season. Maybe some of these things bother them, but by the end, by ending on a strong episode that's well written and does, strike all the emotional chords and everything like that, they had a pleasant experience at the end, so they just want to kind of say, it was good. It's easier to do that. It's easier to do that just to say, well, I liked it. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I liked it. That's extremely easy to say, and intellectually lazy-ass people love to say that because they don't want to actually dig in, analyze, and talk about the issues of it. And that's fine. You don't have to, but don't try to, crusade for it and say, no, it was really good. Good for you and your feelings, but that's not an argument. That's not what makes it. There are two sides to art, or to a story. There is art. There is a subjective appeal to people's life experiences, but then there's the craft. The craft is an actual craft. It's calculable. It's quantifiable. You can actually, see what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And that's all part of it here. So I've gone crazy long. I've got so much more to say about this. I'm sure I will be talking about this in office hours tonight, which might be on the channel before this video loads up, depending on how fast I get this edited. But that's my thoughts on Stranger Things Season 3. I did do the first 2 seasons, which I loved. So I promised that I would do this one, and I wanted to have it on there as well. I also reviewed all of the tie-in novels and comics. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't know what they're going to do from here. So we shall see. But that's all for now. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.